gentlemen, and welcome to the first installment of VTech Talks Blackhawks Hockey. I'm your host, Kyle Savage, and today we will be discussing the Chicago Blackhawks year in review. We will discuss their record, their placement in the Central Division and Western Conference, who had the most goals, most assists, most points, time on ice per game leader, the three goalies that played this year, where their power play and penalty kill ended up, what their goals for and goals against were, and what went right, what went wrong, and what needs to improve for next year. We're going to go ahead and start things off with their record. Out of the 82 games they played this year, they had 36 wins, 42 losses, 12 overtime losses. They ended with 84 points, 6th in the Central Division, one spot higher than they were last year. 10th in the Western Conference, 7 points out of a playoff spot. The last 2-3 weeks, they were within 4-3 of making a playoff spot, but towards the end of they needed a miracle in order for that to happen. They kind of lost the effort a little bit towards the end there. But going into the most goals here, Patrick Kane at 44. He also had the most assists at 66. And then to top it off with a hat trick there, coming off a career year in points, he had the most points at 110. That's Patrick Kane, by the way. Going off of time on ice per game, Duncan Keith had 23.01. He also had the best plus minus at 13 plus. Their power play was a little rocky before December. December they started catching fire, and I would say that would go all the way to about halfway through February, where they almost were. They were top 10. I think they were tied for 9th, but by the time of the end of the year, they dropped down to 15th. Their power play and offense kind of cooled off towards the end of the year there. They were 20.2% in the power play department. Now talking about their dreadfully awful power penalty killing. They were 31st in the league, 72.7%. I think it would have to go off of what their defense was like this year. The defense is young. I mean, you really have two veterans there in Duncan Keith and Seabrook, but other than that, I mean, they're just kind of young players, especially Gustafson. He's a younger player, and a couple of them just coming through to the league. I know we sent one down who is young, but I think he played because we didn't have a Connor Murphy and all them other kinds of people. But hopefully that's something that will change in a little bit. But the goals against were 291 goals against, and goals for were 321. We'll go ahead and get into the goalie stats here. Starting off with Corey Crawford, the number one in the hole. He played 39 games. He was also out for 2 months with a concussion, and that's where the third goalie comes in at. But anyways, he had 14 wins, 18 losses, 5 overtime losses, a goals against of 2.93. He had 1,068 saves, a save percentage of .908. He had 108 goals against, and he faced 1,176 shots. He was also the only Blackhawks goalie to have a shutout, and he ended up with 2. I know he had one at the beginning of the year, and then I think 3 or 4 games after his 2-month concussion, he had a 2-0 victory versus Montreal. Now coming in at number 2, our backup, Cam Ward, coming from Carolina. You know, he's well decorated in Carolina, I would say. He plays his mental preparation, and he plays like he should be the starter all the time, and that's something good to come from a backup goalie, especially, you know, that's a tough thing to happen for him to go from being number 1 to now being number 2. I remember he was also a great leader in the locker room, and the key example here is when they played San Jose and Crawford went out. The Hawks were winning, I think 3-0 or 3-1. They ended up losing that game like 7-3. And Cam Ward came in and basically told the team, saying, you know, that we can't play like that. I deserve better respect, or whatever the case may be. There was things that were said, and that was a kind of a turnaround point of that. And the Hawks really had a good run. They had like an 8-game winning streak. Cam Ward and Colin Delia split time, back and forth games here and there. So he was a great leader, a great veteran in the locker room, which was needed. A little kick in the butt, and things started coming off on a roll. Now getting into Cam Ward's stats here, he played 33 games this year, 16 wins, 12 losses, 4 overtime losses, with a goals against average of 3.67, 998 saves, a save percentage of .897, had 115 goals against. He faced 1,113 shots. He was the only Blackhawks goalie to get 4 penalty minutes, or I should say any penalties this year. He had 4 of them for touching the puck in the trapezoid. Not that big of a deal. I don't think it really hurt them in the long run. But moving on to Colin Delia, he came in on injured reserve when Corey Crawford went out. He played 16 games. He had 6 wins, 4 losses, 3 overtime losses, a goals against average of .361. He had 495 saves for a save percentage of .908. He gave up 50 goals and he faced 545 shots. He played very well for us this year, I would say. I can't wait to see what his future holds. Hopefully we keep him on and we don't get rid of him like we've had with the past couple of goalies that we did. But what went right this year? Kane Taves' career years, DeBrincat scoring goals, power play had hot streaks, 3 goalies who kept them in most games. The big thing to take out of that was Patrick Kane's career year. A lot of him is the reason they were even in the talk of making the playoffs. He was up there for the MVP candidacy. If they would have made the playoffs, hands down, it would have gone to him. But Taves also having a career year. DeBrincat not scored twice as much, not twice as much, but he was up in the 40s. So, good on him. 3 goalies, like I said, really kept the team together, kept them in most games. But we're gonna go ahead and discuss what went wrong this year. Terrible penalty kill, defensive play, coaching change, offense cooled off at a bad time, no offense and defensive harmony, turnovers, the coaching change. Can't really say it's a terrible thing. It's just the system. Leaving one system, putting in a new system is kind of hard to talk about, and it's not what went right. It's a downfall kind of what happened this year. But the big thing is the defense and the defense and the turnovers is what, if you break it down, that's the 2 things that really killed us this year, was those 2 things. What needs to improve? Defense, penalty kill, more production from other people and other lines. Getting rid of older players who haven't produced as much, Chris Kunitz, Marcus Kruger, along those lines, and not ripping the team apart. They cannot rip the team apart. If they rip the team apart, you're screwed. You can't let that happen. Not like after the 2015-16 season, after they got swept by Nashville in the first round of the playoffs. You can't let that happen. If that were to happen, we would be screwed. So let's not, we got a young team. We got to build off of that 3rd round draft pick we got this year. So we lucked out on that one. We got to make sure we make it count. The scouting needs to be on point, and time for Bowman to make his money. But that's going to do it for VTech Talks Blackhawks Hockey. But the next episode will be discussing Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves' career year. I appreciate everyone who listened, and be sure to follow me on Twitter at IIVTechII for updates, as well as to send me your questions or comments or concerns, and maybe in the next podcast we can discuss that kinds of stuff. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and rest of your evening whenever you're listening to this, and hopefully catch you in the next podcast.